Hey, Slater Crusaders, welcome back to our special about identity politics. On the podcast, Politics by Faith, we did a longer episode on Tyree Nichols. I know we mentioned him a couple times on the special today. So we did a longer episode on Tyree Nichols and the 5 police officers in Memphis who are charged with his murder. And we also did on our podcast, we have 2 longer episodes every week. We're like an hour, we go in depth. And then we have 5 shorter morning motivations as well. And this week's morning motivation on Politics by Faith is about race and how race is based on just a pile of nonsense, just bad science from the 1800s. And we got to move on and focus instead on one humanity, one depravity, one remedy, and one community. That's what we need to be. I didn't state this in the podcast, but there's kind of more obvious undertones as well of personal responsibility. And that's what I want to talk about here. Thomas Sowell, famous quote, he says, "You cannot take any people of any color and exempt them from the requirements of civilization." You can't get away from that, including work, behavioral standards, personal responsibility, and all the other basic things that the clever intelligentsia disdain without ruinous consequences to them and to society at large. And the first free black people in America didn't want exemptions from civilization. They didn't want it. They wanted freedom. They wanted the chance to prove that they could overcome the difficulties of life. And that's why in a minute I want to get to the Tulsa Race Massacre. But let me state this first. The Bible's very clear about this. The Bible's very clear about personal responsibility. Paul tells the church of Thessalonica, this is in 2 Thessalonians 3. He says, keep away from the idle and the disruptive. Paul says, we were not idle when we were with you, nor did we eat anyone's food without paying for it. No, on the contrary, we worked night and day, laboring and toiling, so that we would not be a burden to any of you. And Paul says, we did that as a model for you to show you how it's proper to behave. He says, for even when we were with you, we gave you this rule. The one who is unwilling to work shall not eat. Personal responsibility. The one who's unwilling to work shall not eat. Such people we command and urge in the Lord Jesus Christ to settle down and earn the food they eat. How amazingly relevant is that? And then 1 Timothy 5:8 says, but if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially the members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. But part of the Black history message, part of the identity politics message is you can't do it for yourself. You can't. You are unable. You cannot overcome. Everything's against you. The system is against you. Frederick Douglass, one of my all-time favorite lines, an incredible speech. He says, everyone would always ask me, what do we do with the Negro? And he says, I have one answer. He was a former slave. I got one answer. Do nothing. Do nothing with us. You doing with us has already played mischief with us. Do nothing with us. You've done quite enough, is what he said. He said, if the apples will not remain on the tree of their own strength, if they're worm-eaten at the core, if they're early ripe and disposed to fall, let them fall. I'm not for tying or fastening them on the tree in any way, except by nature's plan. And if they will not stay there, let them fall. And if the Negro cannot stand on his own legs, let him fall also. All I ask is give him a chance to stand on his own legs. I love that. Let me give an example. An example of standing on your own legs, and an example of how the education industrial complex has framed a narrative of oppression and victimhood. 2021, the left made a big deal of the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre. It was all over the news, tons of articles. I never heard about it. I never heard about the Tulsa Race Massacre. So they were right about that this was not taught. This was not given a proper due in the history of America. If you're just listening to this on the podcast, or you're just tuning in now, the first segment of the show, we talked about the 1619 Project and how they teach history and how they should teach history. We played a clip of Morgan Freeman saying Black history is American history. So we went through all these amazing Black people in our history that the 1619 Project does not teach, because there's stories of Black people overcoming. So you can't teach stories of Black people overcoming and teach Black kids today that you can't. So they don't teach the stories of people overcoming. They just teach the stories of oppression and end it there. But the Tulsa Race Massacre shouldn't be taught like that. The 1619 Project, when they teach the Tulsa Race Massacre, they stop at a certain point. They don't finish the story, and I want to finish the story with you right here. So here's the background. Tulsa, Oklahoma. This was just after World War I, right, 1921. Unemployment was very high, a lot of men coming back from the war. Things were not great. The KKK was in full swing, Jim Crow laws, legislating segregation. It was a pretty ugly scene. So black people in Tulsa started their own neighborhood. It was called Greenwood, very prosperous part of town. They called it the Negro Wall Street. And there were grocery stores and 2 newspapers and 2 movie theaters and black doctors and dentists and all that great. It was May 30th, 1921. A 19-year-old shoe shiner, a black 19-year-old shoe shiner, got in the elevator to go to the top floor of a building. And in the elevator was a 17-year-old white girl. So you have a 17-year-old black man, 19-year-old black man, 17-year-old white girl. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And someone working at the store heard a woman's scream, and they saw a black man run from the building. The store employees called police, thinking that this woman was assaulted. Now, no one knows what happened in that elevator. There's theory that maybe they were actually lovers, which of course was taboo then. Maybe he did attack her. Who knows? Who knows what happened? His name was Dick Rowland. Her name was Sarah Page. So Dick was arrested. And an angry white mob met outside the police house. Actually, I should say this. There were 45 officers in the police force. 2 of them were black. It was actually a black policeman who found him and arrested him, took him to the city jail. And the police commissioner got a phone call threatening his life. So he had Rowland, the 19-year-old, transferred to a more secure jail on the top floor of the courthouse. Now, the attorneys of the city, they really liked the guy because he shined their shoes. So the attorneys of the city, the white attorneys, are like, no way did he do this. No way did he commit an assault. But the local newspaper, which was white-owned, wrote these sensationalist headlines, caused people to freak out, and a mob formed to lynch him. So you got a white mob wanting to lynch the 19-year-old black man. The sheriff, white, shut off the elevator to the top of the building. He had 6 men armed with rifles and shotguns on the top of the roof and all throughout the courthouse to protect him. Had other deputies at the top of the stairs with orders to shoot any intruder on sight. So you have the white sheriff. You with me like the scene here? You got the white sheriff protecting the black 19-year-old. You got the white attorneys who are on the side of the black. But you got the white mob who's against the black 19-year-old. And ultimately the sheriff caved to the mob demands. But there were 60 black men from Greenwood who were in support of the 19-year-old. So they arrived with a bunch of guns to the courthouse to support the sheriff against the white mob. So it's just madness. And there's rumors that the sheriff told black people to come and support him. So the black people are like, we're here. And the sheriff's like, I didn't tell you to come here. And they're like, yeah, you did. It was just total madness. So then all these black people show up with guns. So then 1,000 white people went home to go get their guns. And there was a National Guard armory nearby. So they raided the armory and showed up again with a ton of guns. Total chaos. So the white people were worried about the black people were worried about the white people. Everyone is losing their minds. And someone shot a gun, and then it was just on from there. And it was a proper battle. There were rumors of even reinforcements coming in from other cities to support the black regiment and the white regiment. It was total chaos. And many white people, they weren't fighting, but they were attacked by the white mob for not joining in. And the mob lit fires, and the fire department got turned away at gunpoint, and the whole Greenwood burned to the ground. We don't know how many people died even. They say somewhere between 30 and 300 people died. We have no idea. All over something that started in an elevator that no one even knows what happened. So, that's the story. That's the Tulsa Race Massacre. And that's where the activists stop. And they'll show a picture of Greenwood just burned to the ground. Look at these evil white people. How could they have done such a terrible thing? This is a story of how racist America is. Now, I would say, if anything, it's just an example of the worst of human nature all around. It was Adam Coleman who in the first segment said, yeah, evil comes in all colors. So it was just madness and chaos and humans losing their minds. It's a story about how quickly things can spiral out of control, how quickly a mob can go crazy. But the left said it's about America being racist. Okay. But the Black Lives Matter people, they stop there. Why don't they keep going? Why don't they finish the story? Want to know the rest of the story? The rest of the story is Greenwood, after 36 blocks burned to the ground, had a renaissance, built back stronger than before. W.E.B. Du Bois, he visited in 1926, so just 5 years later. He said, Black Tulsa, Greenwood, is a happy city. It has new clothes. It is young and gay and strong. 5 little years ago, fire and blood and robbery leveled it to the ground. Scars are there, but the city is impudent and noisy. It believes in itself. Thank God for the grit of Black Tulsa. Grit. Very different than victimhood, huh? So again, I bring this up because when the 1619's project's mission is victimhood, they stop the story at the destruction. We should be teaching kids how to overcome adversity, which is why we should finish the story, which is why we should tell about the Renaissance and the grit of all the great people who came before us. Why is the Tulsa Race Massacre framed as a moment of deep sadness and oppression, when it could be told as an amazing story of grit and redemption and overcoming obstacles, full of people with personal responsibility who didn't say, oh, woe is me? The people of Tulsa and people surrounding who then moved in afterwards, they didn't say, oh, we're so oppressed. Ooh. They got to work, rebuilt, stronger than before. But the activists don't want people to overcome obstacles today. They want them to rely on government. They want them to rely on them. It's not America. It's not America. It's not biblical. I'll end with Delano Squires. This goes back to the first segment we talked about, the worldview. The worldview between if you believe in evolution versus if you believe in God creating man, and it leads you to two very, very different places. Worldview is essential to understand people's worldview and to understand your own. Delano Squires, he says, when searching for a guide for opposing race hatred, choose a worldview that sees all people as individuals created in God's image, and reject the worldview that asserts some people are exempt from moral responsibility because of historical trauma. It goes back to personal responsibility. Always choose that which speaks to the eternal and the universal. Always choose the side that seeks humanity before skin color. If you're watching on the TV, you can check out our podcast, Politics by Faith. We take the story of the day, break it down, lament the brokenness, give the historical perspective and biblical truth to make that anxiety go away so that we can have courage to first get the peace to get a good sleep, and then the courage to wake up and fight on. Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, thanks for watching that clip. This was an amazing special we did about identity, politics, and inspired by Black History Month. We talked about how we should really be teaching our history, and we touched on so many eternal themes, so many biblical themes, because we're all wrong, right? There's definitely problems in this country, but we're searching for the answers in all the wrong places when it's all in the Bible. And that's what our podcast is about. It's called Politics by Faith, where we take the story of the day that's causing anxiety, like race in America and Tyre Nichols in Memphis and all these stuff that's just causing anxiety and tension and division. And we talk about it from a historical and a biblical perspective and make the anxiety go away. So if you like that last clip, you'll love the podcast. It's anywhere you listen to a podcast called Politics by Faith.